And ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for your main event. In this corner, from parts unknown, coming in at a combined weight of 532 pounds, the J. Brown Express. And in this corner, utilizing the Freebird rules, your tag team champions of the world, at a combined weight of 832 pounds, the Brothers in Kayfabe.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Brothers in Kayfabe podcast. I am Jake Keel, one of the three brothers in Kayfabe. Although being brothers is a work for us, we are basically shoot brothers as it is. To my right, the newcomer to the territory, that's Triple J, Jimmy Jackson. How you doing, Jimmy?
Good. It's good to be here. I'm excited to talk wrestling this week. I'm excited to talk wrestling every week, but this week in particular because we got to get together and watch a little wrestling together this last weekend, and just a good week. It was a good week.
It was a good week, and to my left, the man with more wrestling knowledge in his pinky finger than the rest of us combined, Mr. Wrestling, Landon Bumgarner. What's up, Landon?
What's going on, guys? And you said the most wrestling knowledge, but also with the less hair out of the three of us at the moment.
Oh, man.
Jimmy was right. We got to get together and watch some good old-fashioned wrestling this past weekend.
It was wrestling. It wasn't wrestling. It was wrestling.
It was 100%
It was wrestling.
Georgia-inspired wrestling.
Dude, that's what I love about AEW. Like I said this weekend, it's like watching WCW, but not making the bad mistakes that WCW made.
Yeah,
Totally.
It's like I think it's so interesting, like how many parallels there are to WCW, but you don't have. Now, don't get me wrong; it could happen one day, but it's like you don't have like the booking book being just passed around.
You're right.
And guys like politically after it. I still like. This is just my personal opinion. I know Tony Khan has stepped up a lot, and I would like someone other than, like, the elite to have booking power, just because, like, just the way history's proven, like, talent booking. It's like, I think out of everyone, they'll be the most likely to, like, continually put themselves over. But you never know, like, say they get, like, a huge, like, TV contract extension. But yeah, so we all watched.
Do we know who the booker is?
I assumed it was Cody.
I think I know there's been like aspects passed around, like Kenny oversees like the women's division.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
basically, I guess we should say we watched Revolution, right? Like we
finally watched Revolution.
We finally were able to watch the last pay-per-view, which nothing really came as a shock because we had seen it, or we knew what was going to happen. We just happened to get together to see it.
It's still a hell of a pay-per-view, though.
It was really, really good. A lot of fun. And I got to say, like, even though I knew, what was going to happen with the title, that was still a really great match.
Well, I mean, it's awesome just seeing Moxley go over finally. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the dude's been a monster since he went over there, so.
And I think just from title match perspective, in my opinion, that might be the best like title match they've had.
Yeah.
Just in terms like, okay, like first you had Jericho and Hangman to decide it, and it's like Hangman's trying to establish himself. Jericho's a veteran.
Right.
Becomes inaugural champ. Okay, let's see how Jericho does, like, on paper as, like, the top of the company. Then we see stuff with Cody, which was good, storytelling-wise. But I think now that it's like, okay, Jericho's, like, established himself as the champion. And I think now we're really getting to see Jon Moxley really come into his own, because the hard thing about like when somebody first comes in to a promotion is they have a lot of hype around them and a lot of just build up of like, hey, this is something brand new. But then it's like, okay, but how did they hold up like after that initial like the hype and the flame around them comes down? And so it was nice to see like, okay, like this is like 100% better than seeing anything that Dean Ambrose did, because
right.
you know, there's whatever the creative is behind it, like whatever the stuff Jon Moxley is doing on AEW camera seems like it's a little more true to what he was. Now I'll say, like, I did enjoy some of like Dean Ambrose's stuff towards the end of his career, because he, you know, one thing is like, you know, and he's like spoken about how frustrated and upset he was, but it was like, you know, like he still did a good job of like, hey, like you're handed this, make it work, and he made it work a lot of the time. What did you guys think was your personal favorite match on the card?
I'll let Jimmy answer that first.
Okay. I mean, I'm a mark for the Young Bucks, so that match was really good. Like, I can't deny that I just every time I see a Young Bucks match, it's kind of like you know what you're getting. It's not. It's usually not that. It's exciting, but it's not exciting in the sense that you're going to see something you haven't seen before. You know, they're just going to go out there and be absolutely ridiculous. And it was Young Bucks versus, I can't even remember who they were against. But
it was Hangman and Omega.
Hangman and Omega. Well, that made it even better. Yeah, I mean that right there was.
The Elite explodes.
I mean, it was amazing. Like, I loved that match. But then besides that, I gotta say, is probably close to a tie for the Moxley and Jericho match, because that's just like a match that I feel like that's a match 20 years from now people are going to be saying, do you remember, you know, Moxley Jericho back at Revolution in 2020?
Right.
You know, people are going to be like, oh yeah, that was a great match, you know. So it was a toss-up.
To me, that card was full of just like, people beating the crap out of each other.
Dude, yeah.
Like Jericho and Moxley. I keep on wanting to say Ambrose because Landon brought up Dean Ambrose. But Jericho and Moxley like beat the crap out of each other. The Elite and the Young Bucks beat the crap out of each other. Like, it was watching a New Japan match there.
And we to jump in here, we brought up a point when we were watching it together. You know, we want to keep kayfabe alive. I want kayfabe to be alive, but we have this, you know, there's this kind of understood thing that whenever the people in the ring together are actually friends in real life, that they'll take a little bit more liberty because there's that deeper trust, and so they'll lay stuff in a little thicker. I'm all for like laying stuff in snug as long as it's still safe. Like, there's no reason to hurt yourself. But I mean, there's a big difference in like, oh, you know, like they're throwing a super kick and it like it's actually connecting instead of like, oh well, he went to super kick his chin and like hit him in the stomach or something like that. So go ahead.
Did I bring up the Bret Hart point on Saturday?
I don't think so.
So, like, we were talking about how stiff the matches were, but I mean, like, that's just what we see, what we think we're seeing. Y'all have seen Bret Hart work a match.
Oh, yeah.
I know Landon has.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy,
I have. Absolutely.
Dude looked like he beat the crap out of people, right? You know how he trained to make it look like that? Have you heard this, Jimmy?
No.
I think Landon does. So he had a feather tied to a string. And before Stu let him work a match, he had to punch that feather to where he made contact, but it didn't move.
Oh, my gosh. That is...
So...
Wow.
Everyone he went against was like, it looked like he beat the crap out of me, but I didn't feel a thing. So I'm just wondering if they're just that good or if they're actually beating the crap out of each other.
It could
because
because then
now,
you hear, like, if you've literally ever listened to any episode of Ric Flair's podcast, you'll hear him talk about, like Harley Race has like the best left hand in the business, and it's because like he's actually like his punches look so good because he's actually punching you as hard as he can. And
that's Mick Foley talking about Terry Funk, saying I always wondered how he got his like punches to look so good. He's like, then I got in the ring with him and he punched me in the head as hard as he could.
And so like I feel like with younger guys, just because like watching, like if you watch wrestling over the past 20 years, you can kind of see the difference of like someone like a Bret Hart or a Ric Flair or a Hogan laying in a punch versus like you notice with guys today, and we joked about Greg and Dustin tweeting about this, but it's like they've really like you don't see as many punches as now you see like forearms into the neck.
Yeah.
Which is
Right.
like, I was such, like, the first time I saw that, I was like, whoa, like, that's sick. That's getting into MMA territory. And now I feel like the elbows to the neck have become, like, the new punch. But we'll get into this here in just a second. I've been watching some old school wrestling this week and seeing guys like Big Boss Man. If you've never, like, studied a match and seen just how great his punches are, like, it's not like a super strict, like, hey, like, I'm a guy on the independents who's, like, been doing MMA classes, like, on the side, like, to develop my striking. Right. It's like, this is just a big guy that you're at a bar and you say something to him that he doesn't think is funny, so he gets up and, like, rears back and, like, with, like, the most ridiculous form, like, swings, but you know he's probably going to take your head off when he hits you.
That's amazing.
well, with all that said, a close second was a tie between the tag team title match, the Bucks versus the Elite, and Moxley and Jericho for me. But first place went to Cassidy and Pac because I've now watched that like 4 times.
Yeah.
And every time I get up for that match, like, it's amazing what these guys will do with a dude that's supposedly limited. I'm doing that with air quotes, limited in the ring, as Orange Cassidy's character makes it. Like, his opponents end up, at least appearing to us, doing a lot of the work. And it just amazes me to watch a guy work against Cassidy like that and get everything over, because that crowd was as hot as it was for any other match for that match, especially with all the chants early on, especially like the he's gonna try like
Yeah.
it's amazing whenever you can get comedy that a comedy match that gets to that level, like people were treating it like it was a 5-star Matt Classic,
dude.
And
it is crazy how over Orange Cassidy is, and how over he is with me. Like, I love him so much.
It's crazy for me too, because like I like comedy wrestling. There's a place for comedy wrestling, but like I've never gone out of my way to say a comedy match was my favorite match on the card. So, for me to say that Orange Cassidy, like, that was my favorite match, that's kind of saying something for that match. Like, plus Pac is like the perfect kind of opponent for that, because he's just such a great worker, and he's another one of those dudes that makes it look like he is beating the tar out of somebody.
Yeah, I don't ever want to meet that dude in real life because I'm scared
Right.
of him.
What's crazy is, like, I would tower over the guy and I'd still be afraid to mess with the dude.
Yeah.
So, Landon, what was your favorite match on the card?
My favorite match, I think, man, it's either, I think, just from a storytelling standpoint, either Cody versus MJF.
Oh, man, I forgot about that match.
Or, like Dustin Rhodes was great. as well, especially with his sick new face paint where it's like his face is like unzipped. Jericho versus Moxley was good. I think I got to go with Cody versus MJF just because of the storytelling leading up to that point, and then the storytelling of the match. And I'll say this, and I mean this with the utmost respect. So sometimes, like, things that happen on TV and wrestling, and I think this is one of WWE's biggest problems now, is like you took 40 minutes to say something that should have taken 20 minutes to say, or you took 20 minutes to say something that should have taken 5 minutes to say. I feel like some of the build-up with Cody versus MJF was like that. Like, it was all solid, but watching, like, the video package with, like, the additional graphics of just where it's, like, MJF saying, like, hey, like, you'll get your match on 3 conditions. Condition number 1, do this. Condition number 2, do this. Condition number 3. And, like, seeing, like, the condensed clips of that. That was more effective to me than, like, watching the individual segments as they happened.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, like, you can't, like, this is just my personal opinion, there's no amount of action that can surpass, like, long-term storytelling. Like, case in point, like, if you were to ask me, I think the best match that's happened in AEW since their incarnation is Cody versus Dustin.
Oh, yeah, by far, I would say.
Like that, and I think the reason it stands out so much is because you have that storytelling that has been built up for years to where, like, it just, like, it carries a lot more weight than, like, hey, we're going to have Dustin versus one of the guys from Private Party this week. It's like, like, I'm sure there's going to be something, like, there's going to be a cool highlight in that match, but it's not going to carry the same weight as that. All in all, Revolution was great. I think they've had stronger shows.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But what, like I told you guys when we were watching it, the one thing I appreciate about AEW, and I don't know if it's their presentation or what, but their pay-per-views feel like pay-per-views versus, you know, oh, like, cool, here's, you know, Elimination Chamber or here's Fastlane or something. It's like, it just feels like another weekly episode of TV.
Well, I thought it was...
You know... Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was just going to say, I thought it was cool. Like, you know, obviously we're like, you know, a month or even 2 months almost removed from Revolution. And so all the little, like, ads in it were for, like, this quote-unquote blood and guts match that was going to happen. And I thought it was so cool that they didn't relegate blood and guts match to a pay-per-view. It was just going to be on an episode of Dynamite. Hey, we're doing a special episode of Dynamite. It's this. And I would love to see WWE do more of that. I know they can't. They're in too deep, that type of thing. But having only 4 pay-per-views a year, first of all, I don't mind paying pay-per-view prices, right? Like, I don't, it doesn't, you know,
totally
make me that upset. And then you have the ability to build actual storylines into it. Instead of now, it's like, okay, we get out of Mania, and you have 4 weeks to figure something out for Money in the Bank. And like, the Money in the Bank match this year is going to be cool with the whole corporation. You got to climb the corporate tower or whatever. But if that was just on an episode of Raw or SmackDown, like, to get me hyped for SummerSlam, because SummerSlam is the actual thing that I care about, then that would make a little more sense than trying to do a whole other pay-per-view. It just feels like you can't effectively build.
I was thinking about this whole, because I remember your comment, Landon, about how they feel like pay-per-views. And so I thought about that a little bit. And, you know, I was sitting there thinking, when was the last time that a pay-per-view in WWE felt like a pay-per-view? And it was back when they weren't giving it away for $9.99 or free each month. Like, all of a sudden they've got a network, and it's like, well, damn, pal, we gotta give them something each month, and it's not, they're not earning it by making us pay the $50 for their show. It's like well, you've already got the subscription, so here's some new crap. And I'm not saying that everything in WWE is crap, because there are some great workers. There's a lot of good workers in WWE. But, AEW is doing it to where they have 4 or 5 pay-per-views a year. And so once they get to that pay-per-view, they've been building this. They've been building it for a couple months at the very least. And WWE has gotten into this deal where we got to get at least one pay-per-view special event out each month, maybe even 2. And so how are they special anymore? They're not. I mean, even WrestleMania to the point hasn't really felt special the last couple of years. They've been great cards and had a lot of surprises, but to me, that's just how I feel about it. They just don't feel special anymore.
Totally. I think the biggest and worst thing that has happened to the wrestling business, period, is oversaturation.
Yeah.
Raw moving to 3 hours weekly was a big mistake. Some people, you could argue Raw and SmackDown moving to 2 hours a week was a mistake, just because, being a mark, it's like, I want to consume all the wrestling I can, especially when I was younger and I had the ability just to get home from school and then watch as much wrestling as I wanted. With NWA Power, they proved right off the bat, it's like how easy it is to digest a well-written 1 hour show.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think, Jake, you hit it right on the head. And WWE's been super clear about they want fans to be oversaturated with content with the hopes of like, hey, you're never going to want to watch anything else or look at anything else because we've given you more than you could ever want. But it's like, is it better to have 1 hour of good weekly product or 15 hours of mediocre product?
Yeah, I think it's better to have 1 hour. I mean, Jimmy, what do you think?
I would agree. Well, and also, we can kind of segue a little bit if we want to, but I think because you have so much time to fill, you have so many people on your roster, and that causes you at a time like this to maybe let go of a lot of people in one go if something bad happens. Obviously, WWE released a ton of people.
Right.
That is all maybe tied to the XFL. It's sort of the understanding. Now,
did y'all hear that Vince McMahon is getting sued today?
I just saw that before we started recording. Vince McMahon is getting
by
sued
the commissioner of the XFL.
Getting sued because he basically was saying, I was promised this money and I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
Which,
I will say, I think the guy has a right to do that.
I think so too.
But I will say, the scary thing is, Vince McMahon and the WWE have never lost lawsuits. And I think that's the story of, any, big public corporation is, you just can't do it. But it is, that whole thing was shady, and I was very disappointed because I loved this season of the XFL leaps and bounds better.
Oh, I did too.
Than the original. And I'm a guy I love football, but I get burnt out on watching live football. I would much rather just keep up with scores. And I think it's just from an oversaturation thing, and you get a lot of the politics. Involved, but the XFL, I was watching every Saturday and Sunday. It was great, and then Corona happened.
It was easily digestible.
Exactly, it was clear. The gameplay was sped up. It was hey, we're not going to have any filler. Like, we're just going to play ball and do it. But then the XFL suspends operations for the rest of the season because of Corona. And what was encouraging was like everything else suspended except the XFL, and then a week later they suspend. And then all of a sudden it comes out like, hey, we're liquidating the company. There will not be a 2021 season. And like immediately it's like, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden you see like everything but a skeleton crew has been laid off, and you think, well, maybe they're just going like bare bones to financially survive this season and then bring everyone back, in 2022. But that was not the case, and then they filed bankruptcy. Vince is a genius, like good or bad. Like
he is.
He's a genius financially in the way he handled it, to where I think the way he has it set up is Vince McMahon personally will not have to pay a single cent as far as like recovering the debt from the XFL. But the thing I really didn't like, and I'm not surprised by it at all, was in 2015 when they did the first, they did like the big live reveal about the XFL coming back, and they did this Q&A, a live Q&A with Vince McMahon and Oliver Luck. And it said, is the WWE going to be affiliated any way at all, like even financially? And they were very clear of, no, this is all under Alpha Entertainment. It has no connection with the WWE other than Vince McMahon is financially part of both. But through the bankruptcy or through the bankruptcy forms coming out, then it became apparent that the WWE, it was either 23% or 33%. Like World Wrestling Entertainment had 33% stake in the XFL. So then immediately it's like, well, okay. And so I think that's what makes it really easy. And like, I'm not a legal expert, so I don't know all the details. But I think there's a part of like the reports of Vince being upset and frustrated with losing, and then all of a sudden we have all these simultaneous releases of people in WWE. But then you also see like, hey, like there's reports between like 22 and like $40 million lost because of WrestleMania this year.
Yeah.
And WWE's always been very clear about like they gamble every WrestleMania because they want it to be bigger financially than the one before. And so I think that's also part of it, like trimming the fat, good or bad, during this. It's just like just a sucky thing.
I'm with you on that part, but their projected numbers for the year is still $1 billion, which is what they made last year.
Yeah, and the fact that potentially they could have
I'm not on that train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they could potentially have record-breaking profits for 2020 financially. And it'd be like, here's where I stand on that. Like, as a business person, like I totally get that on paper, but it's like, would you rather make record-breaking profits because you have quality content as a company, and like, hey, like our live events, whenever they return, are way up, like we're getting better ratings on TV, or doing it because you're trimming expenses?
Right.
Well,
I mean,
I think that like the way I chose to view it is I feel terrible for all of these people who got fired, furloughed, all of the above, right? Like, I just, it makes me so sad for them. As several of them have said, like, they can't just go out and wrestle someplace else because it's where no one's wrestling. Like,
right.
And two, it's like, this is a company that some of these people, like Zack Ryder or Heath Slater, have been with over a decade. They've been there. I mean, almost 2 decades in some cases. And
right.
It's like all of a sudden now this company wants nothing to do with you. You're done because they're trimming fat. And it on one hand it makes me really sad. On the other hand, and the way that like I want to try to view it is this going into a time where WWE is going to put their head down and actually make a good product? I don't think they.
I would hope.
I don't think. Well, me too. I don't think they. I think some of the people they cut are the people they should have been using. But,
right.
Like, is this? Hey, we're actually viewing this as we were hoarding this talent earlier because AEW exists and New Japan exists and all this stuff, and now we're going to put our head down. And we're actually just going to make wrestling that people like, and in order to do that, we have to get rid of some of these people.
Well,
I don't know. It feels like the war between AEW and WWE has reached the point, like all last year in 2019. I mean, as like my first kind of full year of wrestling fandom, it was such an exciting time because it was always something new. I mean, it was like AEW,
yeah.
And then all of a sudden Impact has a better TV deal and NWA is doing a show, and you know, I mean, just all of these different things that kept happening. I mean, I remember at one point I was talking to Landon, and I was like, Landon, something every single day is happening that is important to wrestling. And that is so cool. And then we've reached, in October, it's like NXT goes on USA, Fox gets SmackDown, Dynamite launches on TNT, and like those first few weeks are so exciting, and then it dies, and then I feel like it dies down, and now we're at the point in, you know, close to the end of April where it's like this truly is just heads down, plowing forward. I mean, there's nothing that wrestling's always exciting, but there's nothing like looking forward. Like all last year, it was like, I'm so excited when AEW gets a TV show. I'm so excited when SmackDown goes on Fox. What's that going to look like? All that stuff's over, and now it truly is just like, who's making better wrestling? Who do I get to watch every week because I like it more than everything else? And I would hope the WWE would sort of take some of these bad things and turn them into something that could actually make an interesting product for WWE. But I don't know. With Vince in charge, I just don't know if that's possible anymore.
And to survive it and get to that point again, we're going to have 97 Vince back. We're going to have the dude that had to bury his feet in the ground and push because I'm about to lose my company. Now, I don't know if Vince is in that dire straits. Like I said, they're cleared to make $1 billion this year, and in the middle of a pandemic when everyone's losing money. But, you know, it's funny that we didn't even intend on talking about this.
I know, I love it.
Like this in depth today. But like, you know, it's like we're the Brothers and Profits podcast right now.
The financial advisors in Kayfabe.
You know, I was sitting here thinking, you know, and next on the Brothers in XFL podcast, we're gonna talk about what XFL players are gonna join the NFL. But we've got to have. First of all, Vince needs to take AEW seriously, and I don't think he is.
I don't think he is either.
Hey, boys, breaking news. Our boy Gronk has just been traded to the Buccaneers.
What?
So he's not going to be with the WWE anymore?
At this point, I have no idea. It's like, here's the thing with, like...
What is happening?
Going back to, what is wrestling in 2020? Like, I get the mainstream appeal of Gronk, and you shell out all this money to have him at WrestleMania, but then it's like...
He was the worst.
It's like, if Gronk is that big of a deal, like, why aren't you using that for, like, a mainstream? Like, the wrestling fans are going to hate Gronk, but, like, the mainstream fans are like, oh, dude, like, that's Gronk for the Patriots. Like, turn to that. Like, I would hope... Go ahead.
It's not like they signed Tom Brady. Like... I know it's Rob Gronkowski and he's a big name, but like it's not like they signed the absolute superstar of all superstars. It's not like when Mike Tyson came into the company and did a cup of coffee.
I've wanted to talk about that because I talked to my roommate about that. Was like, when was the last time? Like, I would say probably like Floyd Mayweather, but even like when they brought him in, like he wasn't nearly as big of a star as he was a couple of years ago.
Well, I guess you could, I mean,
right.
Not that it's was for a cup of coffee. She actually wrestled, but I guess you could say Rousey, right? Ronda
Yeah.
Rousey, like
Rousey's a great
Yeah.
example. It's like, for how long have we had like mediocre celebrities like do stuff for WWE? Like, look at the guest general manager of Raw years, to where it's like,
Oh my
like you get a
gosh.
Hugh Jackman, but it's not Hugh Jackman promoting X-Men. Or you get, you'd Aussie.
You're going to have to go through a bunch of Ken Jeongs to get to your Hugh Jackman.
Right. And it's like they had Ozzy Osbourne one week, and it's like, oh, like, I wonder who's going to be there next week. And then it's like, it's Cedric the Entertainer, who, like, hadn't done anything for years. Now he's got a TV show, but it's like, why can't we get, like, something, like, why is WWE not shelling out all, like, why are they not saying, like, hey, we're going to pay Conor McGregor $4 million
man.
for one appearance on Raw? We're going to give him a live microphone in the Performance Center
dude, that would be
and let
incredible.
him just cut promos on everybody.
Or
Give him the Mike Tyson spot.
totally.
Exactly.
I mean,
I feel like as a wrestling fan and as an old wrestling fan, like if you were to go into that where it's like, who's going to like be the guest general manager? Not that they do that anymore, but if you were going to do that, it's like obviously someone like Conor McGregor. Yes, but like it's been so long since the 80s now, and even the
Right.
90s in some aspects, that it's like, go get some wrestlers from back then that people loved and bring them back. Like, I know that they've done that some with like the Raw reunion episodes, but they don't ever use them for anything. It's like, hey,
Right.
we're going to bring out Sergeant Slaughter, and he's just going to stand there, and then he's going to go back behind the curtain. It's like, that's awesome, I guess, but like, if you told me that if I tune into Raw and I got to see, Hacksaw for three hours actually do something, even if it was all just 24/7 title stuff and it was just kind of like ridiculously stupid, like, I'm more excited about that. I understand the mainstream maybe isn't, but like that at least gives you something, and then people who watched back in the day will go, oh man, I remember watching Hacksaw, that was great, or whoever.
well, your perfect example of this is Jake the Snake Roberts in AEW.
Oh my gosh.
He doesn't have to get physical.
Yeah.
He's cutting money promos every week,
The best.
and he's a manager. Bring back managers. Let these big over people from the 90s and the 80s come back, put these guys over, and make stars. Lance Archer is already a star in AEW,
Okay.
and he hasn't done anything.
Lance Archer.
And it's because Jake the Snake is in his corner.
I love Lance Archer so much. I hadn't seen any of his work before AEW, and now that he's in there, I can't wait to see what's next. They've opened at least the last two Dynamites with like cold open Jake the Snake promos, and like exactly like you said, Jake, it is seriously, it is the best. Like I am a big Jake the Snake fan. I love his story. I think sort of his redemption in life through, that you saw in his documentary with DDP.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this. There's a reason why I have one tattoo, and it's a DDP tattoo. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love that story, and I love Jake the Snake. I think that you do bring people back. Like, let me just give you this. If you were watching, or if you heard on Monday Night Raw that Hulk Hogan was going to come out and manage a new act, and he was going to be a regular on the show, not wrestling, not being Hulk Hogan really, just being manager Hogan, right? Like, would you not be
Being in the
would
corner.
you not be somewhat more excited?
Yeah.
Like, I just want to see what it is. That's all I'd want to do, is I would be like, I want to see what this is.
Could you imagine Dean Ambrose in WWE? Okay. He's on his own. It's right before he won the WWE title, but everyone thinks he should be WWE champion because everyone thought he would be the first WWE champion out of Shield, and he ended up being the last. Could you imagine they bring out a superstar who, and I'm not using the WWE term superstar, I'm meaning a superstar, to come out and manage him by the name of Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Yep. I mean, I just feel like...
Now, Dean Ambrose can talk. He didn't need a manager.
Yeah. But I think
But-
it adds so much to the character that, like... I mean, hey, you want a perfect example right now? people love Paul Heyman, and like love him or hate him, Brock Lesnar is over. Like,
oh, he's the most over person in the company.
he's over, and I think a lot of that has to do is because Paul Heyman can come out and just play himself in the worst possible version, and people love it. Like when I saw Lesnar come out at the Raw we went to, Landon and I went to, like, you know,
yeah,
whatever. I think did he come out at the one we were at too?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
came out because
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
when we saw him in 2019, he came out because they were building to him versus Finn
Him and
at the
Finn
Rumble.
at Rumble.
And it's like just the deafening boos. It's like, yeah, he's not over as the most popular guy, but like,
but he's over.
he's over as the most hate. Like it's hard for me to say this because I don't want to, but it's like as loud at on the first episode I talked about how I was there for Edge's return at the 2020 Rumble. As loud as that pop was, Brock Lesnar being eliminated by Drew was a significantly louder pop than that. Like it was like easily the loudest reaction I've ever heard, and like that's what made it painful to like have Edge come out later and it not be as loud of a pop. Still a huge pop, but like that speaks volumes of like everyone in this building hates Brock Lesnar so much, whether they're sick of seeing him on TV or whether like he's worked them into a shoot, like anger-wise.
Well, and again, I think it just goes to show, like, what the WWE does with their, previous wrestlers, people who come back to the company or whatever, is they always put them in these spots that they don't actually do anything. Like, even
Right.
Steve Austin at this point comes out, does his thing with the beer, flips the crowd off and moves on with his life, and it's like that's awesome.
What?
Exactly. It's fun,
What?
but it's not. It doesn't add anything. It doesn't add any sort of meaningful way for me to want to watch the next week. But
And it's not helping the current
it's not helping
talent.
the current talent at all. But you have Jake the Snake in AEW, who all he has to do is walk to the ring, look at Cody, and say, "Caesar, oh my Caesar," and I'm immediately over the moon. Like, I need to know what's going to happen next. I need to tune in, because if I don't see what happens next in the story, I'm going to feel like I've missed out.
And going back to the whole manager thing, like some of the greatest managers in wrestling history are former wrestlers. So it's like they know what it takes to get over either as a face or a heel with the crowd. And like that's what blows my mind is like, Authors of Pain, like I guess they're cool because like they're big and intimidating, but like the reason they've done nothing since leaving NXT is because in NXT you had him with Paul Ellering, who managed the Road Warriors. I mean, watching Shawn Spears versus Cody, like on paper, it's like, oh, like that's like, and I mean this in the sincerest way. It's like, oh, that's a nice like mid-card match.
Yeah.
But when they had their match at I want to say it was Full Gear.
I think so, yeah.
They have their match, and you see Tully Blanchard doing like old school manager heel work where he's putting the foot on the rope. He takes off his belt, throws it, gets caught, so then like he pulls like brass knucks out of his pants, like doing everything he can to cheat. And then like you've Arn Anderson come out and back Tully down. So it's like it blows my mind. Like here's something I would love whenever why
It's so easy.
Don't you exactly, like why don't you have people that have like done so much in their careers not come back and like use their momentum to try and get other talent over instead of just a one-off like, hey, here's The Rock and Becky Lynch in the ring, or hey, here's here's Stone Cold and Ricochet in the ring shaking hands or something.
Or here's DX and Seth Rollins.
Yeah, it's like imagine like imagine like if Triple H and I don't think with his ego, I don't think it's gonna happen. Like, imagine if Triple H's only on-screen role was as a manager. Like, not as the authority, not as a GM, not as, like, hey, like, I know, like, I'm a bad guy on Raw and SmackDown, but then in NXT, like, I'm everybody's favorite. I'm everyone's favorite dad.
Oh.
It's like, imagine, like, we got a glimpse of it, like, whenever, like, when Seth Rollins first turned heel and aligned with the Authority. It's like, imagine if the Authority's only role was like, hey, we are personally going to manage Seth. Like, how impactful that would have been.
You know, I love 80s wrestling. You know, I love late 80s WWF. Everyone loves that stuff. Every heel in the company had a manager. It didn't matter if they could talk or not. They had a manager. And Bobby the Brain Heenan, probably the greatest manager of all time. You know, it's a debate, but he's one of the guys that is that GOAT status as a manager. Had at least 5 guys at all times under his management. Why can't we do that now? Have some of these great old heels that we used to, that were super over, come back. And I mean, you can even have managers for faces like Cody has with Arn, but it's like, it just helps the effective heel work in the work.
And I think the example that you get today in WWE is the biggest one is Zelina Vega with Andrade, Austin Theory, and Angel Garza. But it just does nothing for me. That one in particular, because I just don't. I don't believe. I just don't believe like the sort of like if you have, you know, I see an interview with Sean Spears and Tully Blanchard, and it's like I automatically immediately believe that Tully Blanchard is a bad dude. But
well, I think.
I was going to say, but with this, like, you know, Andrade, Zelina Vega thing, it just doesn't. Like, she was on commentary this week on Raw. I watched it, and, I mean, just her commentary, like, literally, she's like, you're stupid. You're bad at commentary, and you're stupid. And it's like, that. What is that?
Here's the thing. She could be leading the best heel stable in the business right now, because all 3 of those dudes, they sit there and they're like, they're good heels, but they could be elevated. Andrade's a great heel.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is WWE hasn't let any of their people besides like a Paul Heyman take the training wheels off.
Yeah,
they're out there with their training wheels and they don't get to say what they say.
Yeah, when was the last time WWE had a real legitimate heel that wasn't someone like, when was the last time someone in WWE other than Brock had real heat instead of go away heat? And I think my personal opinion is because you have a lot of their philanthropist and corporate sponsors that limit to, like, MJF. I hope he never goes anywhere near WWE. Could he still get over?
He'll be ruined.
Yeah, could he get over? Yeah. Is he going to be anywhere near the heel he is? No, because of those, like you said, those training wheel limitations. And I, like, from a business point, I get it, because there's stories of the $1 Million Man and the Dudley Boys where they talk to Vince and they're like, okay, like, I'm a heel, so I'm not going to do autograph signings. And then Vince laughs and says, oh, yeah, you are. Which I totally get that from a business standpoint. But it's like, you know, where's somebody, like, when was the last time, like, there was a heel on TV that where you thought, like, I cannot wait to see them get their face kicked in, instead of like, oh, like, I just want to change the channel because this is just boring.
I can't think of anything since I've been watching.
SES CM Punk.
Yeah, like, you had, like, that's a great point. Like, the Straight Edge Society, like, everyone in the wrestling world has their opinions on Punk, good and bad. But it's like, if you look at the numbers of what he drew as champion, And if you look at like the heat he got with the straight edge society, to where he just did the simple thing of like, hey, I'm better than you, and it's because I'm straight edge. And so like to the average person, it's like, oh, like you're not better than me. You're just like a skinny little punk, no pun intended. But it's like, and I'm not saying this is the best thing, but you look in the Attitude Era at, Ministry Undertaker, to where he was doing like all this dark evil stuff. And so like he worked every church in the United States into a shoot about being this this evil guy. And it's like, for me, like, for those of you who don't know, like I work at a church and I do a lot of church work, and so like I love hearing stories of that, and it's like, no, like you guys just got worked over like Undertaker being a great heel. And one of the things I love about old school wrestling is hearing stories either from Jim Cornette or Jerry Lawler or Terry Funk or Ric Flair, guys talking about like Roddy Piper, to where it's like, yeah, we finished the show and we got out and they were standing by my car, or like security had to run us to the back because their people hated us that much. I mean,
what was that story?
And
was it Terry Funk? Someone like stabbed him as he was leaving like the arena.
Dude, there's so like you look at the list of wrestlers that have been just stabbed because like they made people that mad. It's like one of the things, I can't remember who I heard say it, was like today's heels, and I think part of it comes from people trying to copy The Rock and Stone Cold, of like they were like the first,
be a cool heel.
Yeah, in the NWO, it's like, oh, like they're bad guys, but they're cool. We want to buy their merch. And you have so many people trying to replicate that, and it may be a WWE corporate thing of like, hey, you're going to be a heel, but we still want to sell your merch because we're not about to lose out on money like that. Versus, so it's like, it just goes back to like what's better in wrestling, like having a cool heel to where it's like, man, like I want to wear a Seth Rollins shirt, I want to wear a Kevin Owens shirt, or it's like, dude, like I cannot wait until Roman Reigns gets his hand on Seth Rollins, and I hope Seth Rollins legitimately gets hurt. I hope his knee blows out again and he retires from it. And it's like, it's just such a simple thing, like good guys and bad guys. Like it only works if there's clearly a good guy and clearly a bad guy.
Totally.
Right.
And I think I think I'm also you could say part of the problem, if you wanted to say that, is because there are some of those heels that I do love. Like, in NXT, there's a guy named Dexter Lumis, and he's obviously like a heel type character. I love him. His gimmick's basically he's a serial killer, and like I can't help but just be insanely into the idea of the bad guy that we can all cheer for because he's doing something that we all want to see. But you also have somebody like MJF who I literally just want to see him get his head caved in. Like like to take it to reference the Tiger King real quick. Where's the Jeff Lowe of wrestling? Just the guy that you want to see. If you saw him in person, like I have a friend who literally was like, if I saw Jeff Lowe in person, I'd fight him, like just on the spot.
I would
fight
too.
him. And it's like, I want that. Where's that in wrestling?
I just want to knock that stupid hat off of his head.
Hey, hear me out on this. WCW in 1996 in the summer, you see Jeff Lowe, his girlfriend Lauren, and their nanny walk out in jeans and jean vests, and they say, "You know who we are, but you don't know why we're here."
Oh, dude.
Like, you could just see the trash, like, being thrown in the ring.
You were talking about Cornette and all of them with their stories about getting stabbed in the parking lot or, getting chased to their car. Have y'all watched Dark Side of the Ring, Montreal Screwjob?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did y'all hear the Cornette story about how when he saw what happened in the ring, he went running out to his
Yes.
car, and he saw a car blow past him, and he goes, I think that was Earl Hebner.
Yeah, dude. That's the best.
But, to kind of get back on track, we've gone off on a huge tangent here. I didn't think I was going to complain about wrestling so much today as I was.
All good. It's out of love, right?
But, it's out of love. I love the product, and I want WWE to be the best
Me
it can
too.
be because it is the Walmart to your local shopping center. It's the big product. But the wrestling we've watched this week, we've all watched some wrestling. We all watched AEW. We've talked about that, so no need to bring up Revolution again. Landon, it looked like you were ready to talk. What wrestling did you watch this week?
So I watched WrestleMania 8 this week from 1992, and this is back when there were only 4 pay-per-views in the occasional wrestling challenge or Saturday night's main event. If you're not familiar with that card, let me sum it up for you. Ric Flair versus Macho Man Randy Savage for the WWF Championship. And Hulk Hogan versus Sid Vicious. And what's insane about this is, there's always, in the wrestling business, Ric Flair's 92 year in the WWF wouldn't come back until years later. It's what would happen if we lived in the world where WrestleMania 8 was Hogan versus Flair? Flair wins the title at the Royal Rumble, and you just have this build until WrestleMania. And it'd be insane because we still wouldn't get Flair Hogan on TV for a couple of years. And I'll say this, it piggybacks off of what we just finished talking about. My roommate and I, so we watched Royal Rumble 92, actually the Saturday night before Royal Rumble 2020. We'd taken the box set of the Royal Rumble anthology DVDs just to hype us up, get some Rumbles going. And so then we started watching some TV episodes of Wrestling Challenge from 92 to bridge us into WrestleMania. And all I can say is the one thing wrestling lacks on whatever show you're watching is there is so rarely a reason to tune in the next week. If you look at old episodes from the Ruthless Aggression era, the Attitude era, the Golden era, there was always something that would happen at the end that was almost like a cliffhanger of, well, now I got to watch next week because I got to see how Hulk Hogan's going to get revenge on Roddy Piper, or crap, I just saw Dusty Rhodes die in a snuff film. I got to see how this is handled next week on Jim Crockett TV. And that's I love wrestling. I think I don't know if there will be a day that I don't love wrestling. But WrestleMania 8, 1992 was such a great year for wrestling, and it's it goes off air to where it's oh my gosh, Macho Man versus Flair, they're coming to blow, or Sid just destroyed Beefcake's barber shop. Sid literally destroyed the set. There's never going to be the barber shop ever again. And now Hulk Hogan's going to have to deal with that fury and wrath. All in all, it's on the network. And here's the thing. People don't understand. Pay-per-views didn't used to be 4 to 8 hours. I think the runtime is just right. It's either right under 3 hours or right at 3 hours, which is so much easier to sit through, and everything is solid. Every match on the card mattered back then. It wasn't just filler hey, we need you guys to go wrestle a 6-man tag for 45 minutes. But instead it's hey, here's IRS and Ted DiBiase versus these guys, and you just everything was worth watching. You don't want to fast forward through anything. So that's the wrestling I watched this week. Jimmy, what did you watch?
I watched basically some Raws and SmackDowns from the last couple weeks, and I want to tag off of what you said with the end of show problem, which the end of SmackDown last week or maybe 2 weeks ago was Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman having a promo together, basically, where Braun sort of like flips the whole like he basically says like, anytime you're ready, I'm gonna let you in so you can get these hands, which is the worst anyways. But the end of show problem is like that happens, and it's like my favorite character in wrestling right now is probably The Fiend, at least WWE, just because I think it's the most interesting. Yeah. The build was the most interesting, but like I couldn't be less excited to watch Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt wrestle. I just there's nothing about it that gets me interested. Like even the like dynamic of Braun was in the Wyatt family, it's like I just don't really care about that all that much, to be completely honest with you. It just feels like they're booking themselves into a corner once again.
Braun is the perfect example of a guy who could really use a manager.
Yes.
Like, imagine if he had, like, you know, as a heel, if he had a Bobby Heenan with him, to where it's like, hey, here's a guy that's stronger than literally anybody, and we're going to show you why. Or, you know, if he's a face, put him with, like, a Jimmy Hart or somebody. Yeah. Like, man, imagine, like, what if Mark Henry was his manager?
Oh, my gosh.
Or like, if Tony Atlas was his manager. And it's like, hey, like, here's the greatest baby face. And imagine, I'm just saying, like, The Fiend, let's say it's Tony Atlas, and The Fiend takes out Tony Atlas. And so Braun's like, oh, no, like, you just cross
the line, yeah.
It's like, now it's like, okay, now I want to watch him fight because he's going to get
We've got some stakes there.
On that.
But, you know, besides that, like, I feel like AEW like does better in ending their shows, but still maybe has the same problem. Like, obviously they have the they have the tournament going on, but like this last week was the Moxley versus Jake Hagar match. It's a great match. I really, really enjoyed it. I love both those wrestlers, obviously. You know, we talked about Moxley earlier, but it ends and Moxley, you know, stands tall, and it just feels like, okay, they're leading towards Inner Circle and Matt Hardy, you know, broken Matt Hardy type of thing, but like, who does Jon Moxley go after? Like, who's going to come after him next? Like, I don't know. Like, it just feels like, I'm sure they have a plan. I'm not saying that they don't, but it does. There is an element of like, okay, I just saw like the babyface win. Why do I tune in next week?
Well, that's the problem with an undefeated babyface champion. Like, I love Jon Moxley's champion, and that dude is a, you know, ass kicker. But what do you do with a challenger when he's ran through arguably your top heel? Yeah. I mean, MJF is the top heel, but I mean, Chris Jericho is the top main event guy.
I mean, I could see an MJF Moxley thing. That would be cool.
I'd love that. But that also is one of those moments where we kind of ruin somebody's momentum, as MJF is another guy that has all the momentum in the world. So do we make him lose because he's facing the champion? The babyface champion?
It's hard. I mean, I get that it's hard. I'm not saying that I would do any better. I'd probably do a lot worse, actually. But,
right,
it is interesting. On top of that, like I said, I watching AEW. I'm just excited about AEW in general. Anyways, so I'm interested to see how they build to Double or Nothing and see how that show goes. And
they are a company that always has a plan.
Yes.
Like, you can see that from the moment they started. So I'm not worried about that. But, it is something that they have to think about.
I'm going to say the last thing, not that I watched, but I guess I watched it. It was right before we got on here. But the Revolt posted a teaser video. Otherwise known as the
Fear the Revolt.
Known as the Revival back in WWE. But very, very excited about that. I'm interested. I assume they're going to AEW. That's like the word on the street. But
why wouldn't they sign with AEW?
Exactly. I'm very excited to see them versus Young Bucks. I'm excited to see them versus the Lucha Bros. I mean, you just start naming tag teams in AEW and very.
I want to see them against the Best Friends.
Very quickly, it becomes very exciting. So, Jake, what?
And then randomly going over to New Japan.
Exactly right. Jake, what else did you watch this week besides Revolution?
Okay, well, I wanted to do a study on the most over crowds in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And the two matches that immediately jumped out in my head, and one is one of my, well, they're both two of my favorite matches of all time. Just because they, the crowd, it's amazing to see what a true wrestling crowd is whenever you see it. So the first match I watched was Money in the Bank 2011, CM Punk versus John Cena. And I watched the Raw, and the reason that happened is someone posted the Raw right before that pay-per-view. Whenever Vince is going through, or CM Punk's going through all his demands. I want CM Punk the movie, all that stuff. And then I skipped the entire pay-per-view because I don't want to watch those matches. Like, the only other hot match from that is Christian versus Randy Orton, when Christian spits in Randy Orton's mouth and gets DQ'd to keep his title. Like, heel Christian was great. He was an amazing character. Yeah. So I fast forward to the video package, and it starts off with is everybody listening to me now from CM Punk? And it just goes through the whole thing, and then it ends with Vince McMahon telling John Cena, if CM Punk walks out as WWE champion, you're fired. Which is always great to hear on camera, not so much off camera. But it is kind of funny that I watched a match that included him yelling, you're fired, on this week. But how over CM Punk is in that building that night. Like, I've never heard, besides the second match I watched this week, John Cena get booed that hard. And it's amazing to watch John Cena walk straight to the ring and not even look at the crowd. He didn't do a single one of his normal things. I don't even think he threw his t-shirt into the stands. He came in, he didn't do his salute, he walked straight to the ring. It was enemy territory, and it was time to go to work. And I loved it. I love that John Cena. I don't like normal John Cena. I want to see John Cena. He was a heel that night. And it worked. CM Punk was so over, and the storytelling they're doing in that match, because they start off chain wrestling and they're putting themselves in headlocks, and it's an amazing throwback type of match. And it's on top of a lot of people's all-time greatest matches list. I mean, it's a fantastic match. It's so hot. But when Vince and John Laurinaitis come out, and the whole match just changes. They're getting ready to do the Chicago screw job on CM Punk. Vince calls for the bell, and I think he tells Laurinaitis, I can't remember who he tells to ring the bell in favor of Cena. And Cena gets out of the ring and lays the dude out. Like, no, we're not doing it this way. We're going to do it right. And then he gets in the ring and immediately goes down to CM Punk. CM Punk grabs the belt, tries to run away, and Vince is on the microphone going, "Get Alberto out here. We need him to cash in right now." So CM Punk lays out Berto and leaves. And it's just like, I can remember watching that live and going, what is going to happen now?
It gave you a reason to tune into Raw the very next night.
Exactly. It's amazing how we were talking about this and my watching tied directly into this, because it was like the WWE Championship just walked out. And so there was that match, and you know, I want to go watch the Raw after that. I want to watch I think it was the next 2 Raws, because they had that Raw tournament to declare a new champion, which is the most predictable thing they could have done. And then they didn't wait it out, and they had CM Punk return the next week. And they could have done so much more with that. I mean, they could have done big business with him all around the country, running the territories.
Yeah, like there's something like slow builds in wrestling are so missed. And I know a lot of people are afraid of like, well, like people's attention spans are way shorter than they used to be, but having that to where it's like, you know what? Like, imagine if it would have gone that long. Where, say, all of a sudden CM Punk, it required WWE to do business with other places, but you have CM Punk, they do a deal with Ring of Honor, so CM Punk goes to Ring of Honor, or CM Punk,
right?
You know, goes to Mexico,
goes to New Japan,
or goes to New Japan, just for like the sake of like, oh, like WWE could have worked us all like hook, line, and sinker into thinking like, oh, like CM Punk's literally not with WWE anymore because he keeps showing up at these places with their belt, and they don't talk about him on TV. And then build into like, okay, well, it's been like 4 weeks of negotiating, so next week we are going to start a tournament to crown the WWE champion again.
Yeah, he's not coming back. He's gone.
Like straight up lie to our faces that he's not coming back and do that. And all of a sudden you're making, it's like the Piper Hogan thing, you know, to where Piper refused to put Hogan over clean. And
then you've worked everybody too.
Yeah. It's like,
because
run it.
He's gone elsewhere.
Exactly. Like run it until you don't have anything else to do. And then you jump into your next thing and you milk that for all it's worth.
And then all of a sudden in the tournament finals, here's CM Punk.
Exactly.
And he's doing a run-in because he's the true champion. Neither one of these guys are the champion. And there could have been such better business after that. And then he drops the title like a month later.
Right.
Like, but, you know, and then he ends up becoming one of the longest reigning WWE champions of all time. But it was amazing what they had, because they had lightning in a bottle that summer. And then typical Vince McMahon, oh, we got to take him on a ride. They dropped the ball because he ended up fighting Triple H at SummerSlam that year and putting Triple H over.
I will say, like, I don't want to talk about it much just because I'll get bent out of shape. But I actually, like, I didn't watch the matches, but I rewatched all of that build-up of 2011, like starting like when Kevin Nash comes back just a couple of weeks later and all of that. And like everything every on-screen thing Triple H is involved in during that makes no sense at all. It's like, why is Triple H like, okay, now that Kevin Nash showing up, like it's a Kevin Nash Triple H feud. Okay, now we have a Triple H CM Punk feud. Now we have a Triple H John Cena feud. It's like, and Punk says, go ahead.
And Kevin Nash disappeared just as quick as he appeared.
Yeah, and it's like, you can't tell me you couldn't have made more money with Kevin Nash during that time. To where like have Kevin Nash be like, okay, I'm going to challenge Punk for the title, or okay, now I'm going to challenge Cena for the title. And Punk says it in one of the promos. He's like, I don't need to work with you, talking about Triple H. He says, you need to work with me. And Triple H, like, his face gets all bright red. And there's just, like, little segments to where, like, Why is Triple H out there for the contract signing with CM Punk and Vince McMahon? Just little things like that, and it's just a thing of like, hey, we had the potential to have something great, and the gun was jumped.
I will say I do remember when Triple H came out that next night on Raw and fired Vince McMahon, took over the company. And that was another one of those great instances of what in the hell is going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like, we've never lived in a WWF where Vince McMahon wasn't in control. Like, now Triple H is in control, and he's not a heel, so what's going to go on here?
Right.
But, that... I'm going to watch the rest of that build, and I'll probably try to talk about that either next week or the week after if I get a chance to. The other match that I watched, and I watched both of these. I watched this match because it reminded me of how over the Chicago crowd was with CM Punk. And that was One Night Stand. Was it 06?
Is it Cena RVD?
It's Cena versus RVD.
Yes, whenever you were talking about Cena not being all flashy, just like marching in with his head down versus Punk, for a split second I was like, man, like that just makes me think of One Night Stand 06, June 11th, 2006, arguably the most definitive pay-per-view in Landon's fan life.
And the most different pay-per-view besides the last, besides WrestleMania this year, because it was in a small room. It was the Hammerstein Ballroom. It was ECW, so you saw like no WWE blueprint on the whole show, and except for WWE guys being on the show, but to hear that crowd, and it was that 90s ECW crowd, just crap all over Cena.
If Cena wins, we riot.
Yeah, if Cena wins, we riot. Like, I want to say, and excuse this, but I want to say like one of the chants was even Cena swallows. Like, classic ECW, and it was just like, this wasn't the WWE that we have now. It wasn't even the WWE we had in 06. But it was that, and I'm not saying that it has to be dirty, but it was that y'all got lightning in a bottle by doing something different. Something unique.
Exactly.
It was in a small room, and it was wrestling fans. It wasn't sports entertainment fans.
And you have, what I love about that show in particular is the phrase, if Cena wins, we riot. When was the last time we saw like heat to that level? To where like today's equivalent is like, oh, well, I'm going to cancel my network subscription because I'm upset.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of modern fans have had that feeling, and rightly so. But it's like, when was the last time to where it's like, if Seth Rollins wins, like, I'm jumping over this barricade and I'm hitting people because I do not want him to win.
And if John Cena won that night, that's what would have happened.
And there's a on one of Cena's documentary DVDs, I think it's on the network, he talks about how after that match they had he said that's his first experience to have like old school heat, to where they had his bags packed and ready for him. So as soon as the match was over, he gets, like, they have the car outside the back door. The door they have someone in the back seat to open the door as soon as Cena walks out, so Cena can throw his luggage in, the guy can grab it, pull it out of the way for Cena to dive in. And he said like fans were like chunking bricks like at his car because that night they legitimately hated Cena because he, like, in that moment he represented everything they hated about wrestling.
So when I watched that match the first time, a wrestling fan. Back then, I was a WWE fan. I had never watched anything that wasn't WWE. A wrestling fan gave me that DVD and said, watch this. That is the DVD that changed how I viewed wrestling. But at the time, I was the guy that was wearing a Cena shirt. I had my 2 Cena shirts. Like I said, I had purple, I had orange. And I wore the Cena shirts everywhere. I was that guy. And I watched that match and I was like, okay, that changes things. Like, this is different. Like, this is my kind of wrestling. I want to watch this stuff. So I watched that match again now after being a different kind of wrestling fan, and now Landon's holding up the DVD. Oh, that's 05. Oh man. I need to get those DVDs.
Dude, they are like, honestly, like if I had to, and this might be a hot take, if I could only watch one wrestling pay-per-view or event for the rest of my life, I think it would be One Night Stand 06, because it's so different. Like, you have the technical matches on it, you have the brawls, you have the storytelling. There's comedy in it. Like, It's just so good.
Dude, and how hot that room was, and the story that was built into it, where Paul Heyman was, both of your champions, WWE, are going to have a match against my guys. And if one of my guys wins, that title is no more. It is the ECW title from now on. So when Rob Van Dam wins that title, I mean, obviously I didn't watch it live, but like, all these WWE fans were probably going, oh, what's going to happen next? It's that page turner. Like, I need to see the next chapter.
So I was like, that was peak Landon watching. Like, by the fact that I remember the commercials, like saying June 11th. And I didn't get to watch it live because we didn't even have like the ability at our house to order pay-per-view. Like, we didn't have the cable box in order to do it. And like, there's no way, like, because like we've talked about it, like, we had really strict parents, where we weren't allowed to watch wrestling. And so when it came out on DVD, even when I tried to buy it, my parents saw that it was titled One Night Stand. They were like, no, you're not getting that. And me being naive, I was like, it's just like a one night, like, final battle kind of a thing. But yeah, like it, for me, it was like, I didn't see the pay-per-view, but I had to watch. Man, like, I love this part of the show, and it makes me excited for next week to see what we watch.
Jimmy, have you seen One Night Stand 06?
I have not seen the whole show, no.
Have you seen Cena
I have
versus
not,
RVD?
but it makes me want to look it up.
You need to watch it this week. We need to hear your take on this match next week. You have homework from Jake this week, because it was that life-changing match for me. And it's not a Matt classic, but it has the whole package.
I'll watch it for sure. This week my goal in watching, I sort of like the idea of watching matches that I don't know who's in them. Like, I don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
And so I have several DVDs that have either I don't know where, like, at least one of the people is, you know what I'm saying? And so my goal this week is to crack open some of these DVDs up here on the shelf, and maybe watch some Jushin Thunder Liger matches, maybe watch some Terry Funk matches, like.
Oh, a Funkatari,
Exactly.
yes.
So I'll add the Cena versus RVD into that mix.
I think it needs to be at the top of your list. I mean, I will never say bump Jushin Thunder Liger to second, but
I understand.
like, it's such a hot match. It's such a hot match. So, just take a look at it. Tell us what you think next week, because I mean, me and Landon both have it near and dear in our heart, and I think you're going to love what you see, because it's so different from everything else that WWE's produced.
I'll watch it.
So, all right, guys. Well, do y'all have anything else to add for this one?
No, I just want to thank those that have listened so far and given us feedback. We love to hear that, and we want to know what you're watching as well.
Yeah. I want to know what everybody's watching that's listening to the podcast. I want to know people that don't listen to the podcast so they can listen to the podcast, because we're doing. I really have a lot of fun doing this, and I want to have some of those other fans on that we talk about. Some of the people that listen to this show, I want to hear the classic question, why wrestling? Why do you like wrestling?
100%.
I think that's fantastic.
So, well, Jimmy, you were talking, I think you have something to plug this week?
My wife and I's podcast, Date Bit, D8 bit. Our second episode is gonna be going up. Actually, I'm gonna upload it right after we get off this call and finish recording our podcast. I'm gonna upload the second episode. It's up on iTunes now and on
Sweet.
Spotify and all that good stuff. But yeah, so we just talk about video games and the video games we're playing. I think we're gonna start a game called Borderlands 2 tonight together. So we're both looking forward to that. And so listen to this episode 2 for our take on the first one.
I do have something to add, since you brought up video games. Did you know there was a New Japan Super Nintendo game?
No, but I need it.
I found this out through Facebook today, and I've got the name saved. I'll send it to you after this. I can't. It's some crazy Japanese to US translation type deal.
I'm so into it.
But it's old school arcade looking wrestling.
Yeah.
And I want to play it so bad.
I got to find a copy.
So yeah, and you need it. I looked it up on eBay, and they've got Super Famicom releases on eBay. But I didn't see any for the actual Super Nintendo.
So there you go.
There we go.
Ready to go.
Landon, you got anything to plug, bud?
I got nothing. Just to reiterate, check out Date Bit. It's phenomenal. Check out Best Movie Ever. Jake's got some new content dropping this week with that. If you listen to this, we're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Just tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, and answer the question, why wrestling?
And tell me, we'll make even a Facebook group for everybody so we can discuss all this during the week. I mean, we could make a Facebook group, add all of our wrestling fan friends to it, and talk wrestling all week. Maybe get ideas for the podcast, but like Landon said, we want to hear what you like, how you like the podcast, what you like in wrestling, and we want to hear that. So, Landon, you got anything else there, bud?
That's all I've got, fellas.
Well, like he said, go listen to Best Movie Ever. New content has dropped, and that the hyped up Blazing Saddles episode that is finally dropping after. Listen, it's hail season, and I'm a roofer, so I've been busy.
There's been a lot of hailstorms recently, surprisingly.
But I think up next for Best Movie Ever is going to be the original King Kong. So I'm excited to watch that. I've never seen it.
I love that movie.
I've seen almost every other iteration of King Kong but that one. So I got right before all the quarantine, I went to Vintage Stock and got a dual collection called the Kong Collection, where it's King Kong and Son of Kong from the 30s. So I'm going to watch both of those, but that might be a double header episode since they're both an hour long. But yeah, go listen to Best Movie Ever. We've got 10 episodes now. go like us on Twitter at the letter B Kayfabe, B Kayfabe, letter B, then Kayfabe. Tell us what you think. We're on iTunes now, finally. So like, subscribe, review, rate, do all of those things. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Anchor. Make sure you give us a review. It only helps us get more listeners, and it only helps us in the long run help keep making quality content for you guys. If y'all think that the Facebook group idea is a good idea, I can get that up by the next episode. So let us know if you want to be part of that Facebook group. But as far as that, I think that's all we got. Jimmy, do you have something else? To see you with the microphone.
I'm good. No.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for us today, guys. Thank you for listening. And like I said, rate, review, subscribe, and we will see you next week.
Too
sweet.